My boyfriend of 9 years fell in love at first sight with another woman during a business trip. He said, "Let's break up. I've found my muse. Once you meet her, you'll definitely understand me." I smiled faintly. "All right, let's break up." Then, the day I broke up with him, I turned around and accepted another man's marriage proposal. Chapter 1. Luis posted a video on his secondary Weibo account. In the video, he held a woman tightly in his arms and leaped off a bungee jumping platform with her. Their screams of fear and excitement instantly became deafening. After watching the video, I felt surprisingly calm. As usual, I texted Luis that night. After the two of us exchanged a few sporadic messages, we wished each other good night and ended the conversation. I had no idea when Luis returned from his business trip. He merely called me and said, "After work, I'll pick you up. There's something I need to tell you." Luis took me to a restaurant. He sat across from me in silence, but his phone never once left his hand. During dinner, his phone notification chimed from time to time. Every time he checked his messages, his eyes curved into a smile, and a pleased grin naturally appeared on his lips. Only after we finished eating did he speak. "Tonight's meal can count as our farewell dinner." I slowly wiped the residue from the corner of my mouth with a napkin as he continued. "I've fallen in love with a woman. She matches everything I've ever imagined a woman could be. She is my muse. Once you meet her, you'll definitely understand me too." I raised my head and looked at him, smiling faintly. "All right, let's break up." Then, he froze in astonishment. It took him a moment to react, and then his face immediately lit up with joy. "You've been with me for 9 years. After all, whatever conditions you have, just name them. I'll definitely satisfy them." I smiled. "There's no need." I stood up, picked up my bag, and politely said goodbye to him. "Since there's nothing else, I'll be leaving first." Chapter 2. I started dating Luis when I was 20 years old. 9 years had passed since then. As I grew older, I became trapped in anxiety over being an unmarried woman past the ideal marrying age, unable to free myself from it. At the beginning of this year, that anxiety once reached its peak. I had urged Luis to get married many times, and we had argued about it many times as well. After each argument came a cold war. The longest silent treatment between us lasted for over a month. From May 20th until June 25th, his birthday, when I gave him a present and took the initiative to back down. It was probably also from the time I took the initiative to give in and we reconciled that my heart gradually began to grow cold. On the day I agreed to break up with Luis, after returning home, I called Diego, my high school desk mate. I said, "At the end of last year, when my mother was hospitalized, you said that if I still wasn't married by the time I turned 35, you would marry me. Were you joking, or were you serious?" Diego was silent for a moment before asking me, "What happened?" I calmly recounted, "Luis and I are completely over. If you don't mind me, you can marry me ahead of schedule." He asked me again, "Where are you right now? Send me your address." So I sent him my home location. He soon texted back, "Wait for me." Chapter 3. I waited for Diego for 3 hours, but he never showed up. I texted him, but he did not reply. I called him, but no one answered. It seemed that my wish to get married had fallen through once again. However, I did not blame him. In truth, I wanted to get married not because I liked him, but for another reason. I had just fallen asleep when my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, Diego stood outside my home, drenched in sweat and panting heavily. He held a bouquet of bright red roses in his arms and hurriedly apologized to me. "Sorry, a patient from a car accident happened to arrive at the hospital and needed immediate surgery. Time was critical, so I didn't have a chance to call and explain." I expressed my understanding and smiled at him. Unexpectedly, however, he suddenly got down on one knee in front of me and took a diamond ring out of his pocket. "Lisa, will you marry me?" Chapter 4. Last year, my mother was diagnosed with early-stage lung cancer. Luis happened to be away on a business trip during that time, all alone and completely at a loss. I sent a message in my high school alumni group chat. I said, "Classmates, does anyone know someone at People's Hospital?" Diego, whom I had not been in contact with for 5 or 6 years, suddenly replied to me, "I'm a doctor at People's Hospital. What happened? Add me on WeChat and tell me the details." Later, Diego helped me get in touch with a specialist. At the end of the year, my mother underwent surgery and recovered quite well. During that time, whenever Diego had free time, he would visit my mother in her hospital room, and the two of us slowly became familiar with each other again. Once, the two of us were sitting on a bench in the corridor, chatting. As we talked, the conversation eventually turned to Luis. He said, "You and your boyfriend have been together for many years, right? Why have I never seen him come visit your mother?" At that time, I was already truly disappointed in Luis, but I could only force a smile and make excuses for him. He wants to come back too, but he can't help it. The assignment his company gave him this time is very important. If he doesn't finish the work, he can't come back. Diego nodded. A moment later, he said again, "Your mother isn't in good health. Fortunately, the cancer was discovered in time, and her life was saved. I've heard her say several times that she hopes you two will get married and that she wants to hold a grandchild soon." His words struck me directly in the heart. I had originally wanted to hide it, but my eyes betrayed me and turned red. I was silent for a long time, forcibly holding my tears back. I sniffed and said, "I want to get married, but he still doesn't want to." Diego frowned, perhaps to comfort me. He quickly smiled and said, "It's all right. You'll be able to marry someone eventually. If he still hasn't married you by the time you're 35, come find me. I'll marry you." His words immediately made me burst into laughter through my tears. Chapter 5. I accepted Diego's proposal. He seemed worried that I would regret it, because the very next day, he pulled me along to the Civil Affairs Bureau to obtain our marriage certificates. After we came out with our marriage certificates, he pulled me over again, each of us holding a marriage certificate. We took a photo facing his phone camera. He smiled and said to me, "From today onward, you're my wife." On the way back, Diego drove beside me, with nothing to do. I took out my phone and scrolled for a while. Coincidentally, I happened to notice that just a few minutes earlier, Luis had posted an update on WeChat Moments. He wrote, "My muse." In the photo, he and that woman were holding hands and gazing sweetly into each other's eyes. I immediately recognized the woman in the photo as the one who had gone bungee jumping while embracing him. I quickly scanned through his WeChat Moments. Under Luis's post, there were quite a few questions from our mutual friends. "Did you break up with Lisa? Is my memory failing me? Wasn't your girlfriend Lisa? I remember Lisa saying at the beginning of the year that she was planning to marry you. Didn't she?" Luis himself posted a comment under his update as a single reply to everyone. "Lisa and I broke up a long time ago, so please don't mention irrelevant people to me again in the future. My girlfriend will be unhappy." After seeing his collective reply, I could not hold back a laugh. He and I had only broken up yesterday, yet today he claimed we had broken up a long time ago. Diego casually asked me, "What are you laughing at?" I said, "I was scrolling through WeChat Moments and came across a moron who got Alzheimer's at such a young age." Diego chuckled softly. "Then you have to tell him that an illness must be treated. He can't put it off. If he needs your husband's help, he only needs to say the word." I smiled. "It's too late. I've already blocked him." Chapter 6. After marrying Diego, I moved into his home. We were an adult man and woman, and a married couple at that. Even though we had married in a flash, I did not have anything to hold back about. A little over a month later, Diego and I were shopping at a supermarket when, by sheer coincidence, we ran into Luis and his so-called muse. Luis was walking in front, pushing a shopping cart around, while the girl had stopped in front of the refrigerated display case behind him to choose yogurt. Luis took the initiative to walk over, smiled, and greeted me. What a coincidence. I glanced at the things in his shopping cart. There were instant noodles, cookies, chocolate. That made sense. That girl looked to be only in her early 20s. There was nothing wrong with a young girl liking those things. I used to enjoy eating those things too. But every time, without asking me, Luis would secretly put all the snacks I had picked back on the shelves. When I noticed, he would say, "Everything you picked is junk food. I'm doing this for your own good." Before I even had time to speak, Diego suddenly picked up a packet of spicy strips from a shelf beside him and asked me with a smile, "I remember that back in high school, you often bought spicy strips to eat. Do you still eat them now?" My eyes instantly lit up. "Yes. I want to buy several different packets. And those pickled pepper chicken feet too. Diego smiled at me indulgently, walked ahead and, according to my request, swept up all kinds of spicy strips and chicken feet from the shelves. Luis's brows furrowed tightly. Your boyfriend? I casually answered. No, he's my. Before I could finish my sentence, Luis spoke with a knowing expression. Oh, you're a backup guy? Or are you two in the flirting stage? I shrugged slightly. Think whatever you like. I'm going over there now. I wish you and your muse happiness. After saying that, I turned and ran toward Diego, but I could feel a gaze behind me following me the entire time, never once moving away. Chapter 7. When I caught up with Diego, he asked me, is he the moron you mentioned before? I froze for a moment, then could not help laughing as I playfully punched his arm. Nothing escapes your all-seeing eyes. Diego merely raised his brows slightly and said nothing. After we returned home, Diego sat quietly on the sofa, looking at his lonely figure from behind. I somehow felt as though I were looking at a pitiful little creature all alone and forlorn. I walked over, sat beside him, and asked, were you jealous back at the supermarket? Diego tugged faintly at the corner of his lips and replied indifferently, I looked at him in surprise. You really were jealous? He sighed helplessly and raised his hand to stroke my head. He was your boyfriend of 9 years. After all, I'm allowed to be a little jealous, right? I asked him with a smile. Then does it taste good? He gritted his teeth. Sour. I threw my arms around him, buried my face in his chest, and asked, then would you like a change of flavor? As I spoke, I reached out and poked his chest, then continued, I think I'm quite sweet. Would you like a taste? He froze for a moment, then suddenly pushed me down onto the sofa. His intense masculine presence rushed over me. Chapter 8. Diego was usually very busy with work, so busy that sometimes he did not even have time to eat. I normally worked from 10 in the morning until 6 in the evening, so I had plenty of time after work. That day, on a sudden impulse, knowing that Diego would be working the night shift, I made him some soup and stir-fried 2 small dishes. By the time I delivered the meal to the hospital, it was already almost 9 o'clock at night. When I arrived at his department, I did not see him, but I did see a lunchbox already sitting on his desk. The food inside was still warm. Most importantly, there was a sticky note attached to the lunchbox. Dr. Diego. This is the loving lunchbox I personally made for you. I hope you'll like it. Love you, moi. Signed, an adorable little bunny. I could not help shuddering. How corny. At the same time, I inexplicably felt a little displeased. Just then, a nurse happened to pass by the doorway of the department. When she saw me, she smiled and said, you like Diego too, don't you? But I advise you not to bring him meals anymore. He never eats food delivered by other people. He gives all the meals you girls bring him to the nurses in our department. I froze for a moment. It turned out I had misunderstood him. I immediately smiled and placed my insulated food container on his desk. That's all right. He won't eat food made by other people, but he'll eat mine. When the nurse heard that, she smiled helplessly. All right, then, suit yourself. Chapter 9. When Diego returned from making his rounds and saw me in his office, his eyes immediately lit up. Lisa, what are you doing here? I patted the insulated food container on his desk and said with a smile, I knew you were working the night shift tonight, so I made something delicious and brought it over for you. He immediately broke into a wide smile. I was fine until you mentioned it. Now that you have, I suddenly feel hungry, even though I clearly already had dinner. As he spoke, he came over and opened the insulated food container. Lowering his head, he took a few sniffs and praised, smells delicious. However, he soon noticed the other lunchbox with the sticky note attached to it, and his expression instantly stiffened. I looked at him with a smile. Dr. Diego, care to explain? He said helplessly, they're just some young women from other departments. They always like doing this kind of thing, and every single one of them delivers it when no one is in my office. I raised my brows slightly. But you always give the lunchboxes people make for you to someone else to eat. Aren't you wasting their heartfelt feelings? Diego smiled. Wasting food is what's shameful. As for whether I'm wasting other people's feelings, that isn't something I'm responsible for. After saying that, Diego shoveled down a few mouthfuls of food and drank a large gulp of soup. Then, his movements suddenly stopped. How do you know I give the lunchboxes other people bring me to someone else to eat? Before I had time to answer, I saw the nurse who had previously advised me not to bring Diego food walk in. Before the nurse could even speak, she was dumbfounded. I looked at her and smiled. See? I told you he would eat the food I made. Diego looked up and saw her, then casually said, "This is my wife." The nurse looked at me in disbelief. Her eyes widened. "Doctor, you're married?" While busily shoveling food into his mouth, he said, What do you need me for?" Only then did the nurse come back to her senses and say, "The patient in bed 48 wants you to go over." Diego nodded while eating. "All right, I'll be there right away." Diego hurriedly shoveled down a few more mouthfuls of food, then looked at me and smiled. "Wait for me to come back." He was dressed in a white coat, and when he walked, his steps were brisk and full of energy. The way his white coat billowed behind him was simply unbelievably handsome. I stared blankly at his retreating back. I thought, how had I never noticed before that Diego was so handsome? But I waited for him for a long time and still did not see him return. In the end, it was the same nurse from before who came over and looked at me with an enthusiastic smile. Diego's wife. "You should go home first. We just received an emergency ambulance call." He didn't have time to come and let you know before leaving with the ambulance. He truly was very busy. But I did not feel disappointed at all. Instead, I felt rather proud to be the wife of a doctor like him. Chapter 10. Diego did not deliberately hide the fact that he was married from his colleagues at the hospital, but he could not exactly go around telling everyone he met that he was married. So, on one of his days off, I dragged him to a jewelry store and bought him a men's wedding ring. Diego usually had to perform surgery on patients, so it was not very convenient for him to wear a wedding ring. But I made one request of him. I said, "I don't expect you to wear your wedding ring at all times, but for this week, keep it in your pocket. Whenever you run into those young women, take it out and put it on." An immensely delighted smile spread across Diego's lips. He said, "All right, I'll do as you say." Chapter 11. About 3 months later, one night, just after we finished a thoroughly satisfying round of lovemaking, my phone suddenly chimed. The blush on my cheeks had yet to fade, and I was still breathing heavily as I picked up my phone and glanced at it. It was a text message from an unknown number. "Have you been doing well lately?" I guessed who had sent the message almost immediately. I had dated Luis for 9 years. Over the course of those 9 years, we had broken up and gotten back together several times, and I had blocked his number several times. Every time he begged to reconcile, he always pulled the same trick. Immediately afterward, my phone began chiming nonstop as one text message after another arrived. "I think the person I love most is still you. I shouldn't have lost my head for a moment and asked to break up with you. Can we get back together?" We were together for 9 years. 9 years of love isn't something you can simply let go of just because you say so. Don't you agree? Diego asked from beside me. "Why does your phone keep ringing?" I handed my phone directly to him. "See for yourself." He read through every one of the messages Luis had sent, then coldly curled his lips into a sneer without making any comment. I said, "I'll block him." He said, "No need. Put your phone on silent and let him send them. Even if you block this number, he'll just use another number next time and keep texting you anyway." When I woke up the next morning, Diego was still sleeping beside me. I reached over, took my phone, and glanced at it, only to find that after I had silenced it last night, Luis had sent over 30 messages in a row. However, my gaze stopped on the very last text message he had sent. He said, "As long as you're willing to get back together with me, I can consider us getting married." Chapter 12. What are you looking at? Diego's voice sounded beside my ear. He looked at me with sleepy eyes. I handed him my phone and said with a smile, "That moron says he wants to get back together with me. And he even says he can consider marrying me. Do you feel an intense sense of crisis?" Diego took the phone and glanced at it, with a cold laugh. He casually replied with a text message, "Get lost." Smiling, I reached out and wrapped my arms around his neck. "Are you angry?" He tugged at the corner of his lips. "I'm not angry. I just really regret not making my move sooner and marrying you earlier." I buried my face in his arms and said softly, "It's not too late now. But it seems like there are still a lot of people who don't know we're married. Why don't we post it on WeChat Moments? Diego looked at me in astonishment. Are you really willing to make our marriage public? I asked in confusion. Why wouldn't I be? Suddenly, a brilliant light flashed through his somewhat shadowed eyes. Smiling, he hugged me tightly. So all these days, I was just worrying over nothing. You're obviously so wonderful. 1 minute later, I posted an update on WeChat Moments. I wrote, Mr. Diego, please take care of me for the rest of our lives. I also attached the photo we had taken outside the Civil Affairs Bureau that day, each of us holding a marriage certificate. Only 2 or 3 minutes after I posted that update, one of Luis's and my mutual friends suddenly called me. I had only just answered the phone when Luis's dejected, questioning voice came through. The photo in your moments is fake, isn't it? Are you deliberately trying to provoke me? Chapter 13. Luis's words genuinely amused me. Can a marriage certificate stamped with the official seal of the Civil Affairs Bureau be forged? Forge one and show me. Luis still refused to give up. But when we ran into each other at the supermarket last time, you two weren't even together yet. He wasn't even your boyfriend. I could not help letting out a scornful laugh. Who told you I wasn't together with him at the time? On the night I broke up with you, my husband proposed to me the next day. We went to the Civil Affairs Bureau and got our marriage certificates. Back when I liked Luis, I thought he was outstanding in every way. Now, for some reason, whenever I thought of Luis, the word idiot also came to mind. Then I looked at the man beside me. Even with his messy bedhead after just waking up, he still exuded an intense air of restrained sex appeal. Sigh. I really must have been blind before. Diego pulled me into his arms, leaning close to my ear. He said in a deep voice, "Call me husband a few more times. Let me hear it." My cheeks flushed. I haven't hung up the phone yet. The corner of Diego's lips curved upward, and his smile became even more delighted. I don't care. Call me husband a few more times for me. Luis must have heard Diego's voice on the other end of the line, because he immediately hung up. He was probably furious. I put down the phone, and Diego pressed me down onto the bed, his eyes filled with a strong hint of threat. Are you going to say it or not? I bit my lip, feeling somewhat embarrassed for a moment. After all, ever since I had married him, I had never once called him husband. Just now, it had only slipped out because I had spoken too quickly while talking to Luis. He narrowed his eyes slightly and said with a smile, "If you still won't say it, I'm going to take action." I hurriedly reached out and wrapped my arms around his neck, steeling myself. My face flushed red. I began calling out to him again and again. Husband, my good husband, my darling husband, the best husband in the whole world. Chapter 14. Diego was truly easy to coax. As long as I acted a little cute with him, he would completely lay down his arms and surrender. I was also very surprised. I had long since lost the ability to act spoiled during my previous relationship with Luis. That long relationship, with its countless breakups and reconciliations, had already tormented me until I lost myself. I suddenly realized that ever since marrying Diego, I had once again become the enthusiastic and cheerful woman I used to be, the woman who was full of hope for life. There was a wise saying, who had not loved a few scumbags when they were young? I had too, but looking back, if I had never experienced what a jerk Luis was, how could I have understood how good Diego was? But the reason scumbags were scumbags was that they had extraordinarily thick skin. Logically speaking, since Luis knew I was already married, he should have let go of the past and stopped pestering me. Instead, he remained as childish and willful as ever, even going so far as to wait outside my workplace. He called me and said, "I'm downstairs at your company. Come down so we can talk." I laughed mockingly. What is there to talk about? I don't want to see you. But he said, "Then I'll go upstairs to find you." I rolled my eyes helplessly. Fine. Wait for me downstairs. Chapter 15. As soon as I came downstairs, I saw him waiting for me, holding a bouquet of bright roses in his hands. When he saw me come down, he walked forward with a smile and held the flowers out in front of me. "These are for you." I crossed my arms in a rejecting posture and looked at him with an extremely calm gaze. Luis, stop coming to see me. The moment he heard that, he became anxious. We only broke up. That's all. It's not like we haven't broken up before after all these years. Didn't we always get back together in the end? Was it really necessary for you to impulsively gamble with your lifelong happiness and marry someone else just to provoke me? I could not help laughing scornfully. So if I really got back together with you, and maybe actually married you in the future, then I wouldn't be gambling with my lifelong happiness? Luis froze. He frowned tightly. What do you mean by that? We dated for 9 years. Do you think I was just playing around all those years? If I didn't like you, would I have dated you for 9 years? I swept him a mocking glance. Don't make yourself sound so noble. The woman you cheated on me with was your muse. The perfect woman who satisfied every fantasy you had about women. Why are you running over to me now? Aren't you just slapping yourself in the face? Doesn't your face hurt? An embarrassed expression appeared on Luis's face. He clenched his teeth tightly and said nothing. I raised my head and looked at the sky, which was densely covered in dark clouds. There'll be a torrential downpour soon. Hurry up and leave. And seriously, don't come looking for me again, since I'm already married. All I want is to live a peaceful life with my husband. I had no idea what had gotten into Luis. But he said, I'm not leaving unless you accept these flowers. I really had spoiled him rotten over these 9 years. Just look at how stupid he was acting. I sighed. Suit yourself. Then, I'm going back to work. That evening, a heavy downpour began. I was busy with work and had long since forgotten all about Luis. Just before I got off work, Diego called me. It's pouring outside. I'll drive over and pick you up in a little while. I asked in surprise. Don't you have a night shift tonight? He chuckled. I swapped shifts with a colleague. After hanging up, I suddenly heard several colleagues around me gossiping. Just now, there was an idiot downstairs holding a bouquet of roses. He got soaked like a drowned rat. In the end, even the building security guard couldn't stand watching anymore and chased him away. I raised my brows slightly. I told him to leave, but he refused. Now he had lost all dignity when someone finally drove him away. He had completely brought it upon himself. Chapter 16. When Diego came to pick me up, the rain was pouring down heavily. He parked the car at the entrance. When he saw me come out, he immediately got out of the car and walked toward me holding an umbrella. For some reason, as I watched him walk toward me, my heart started beating unusually fast. I could not help thinking of a time last year when there had also been a torrential downpour, almost as heavy as today's. Luis had gone out drinking with his friends in the middle of the night and then asked me to pick him up. Not only had my sleep been interrupted, but it was also extremely difficult to get a cab so late at night. When I stood at the roadside with an umbrella, waiting for a car, the wind and rain were so fierce that I could barely hold my umbrella steady, and my clothes were completely soaked. Later, when I finally picked him up, instead of showing even the slightest bit of gratitude, he looked at me with displeasure and reproached me. Why did it take you so long to get here? At the time, I was already in a miserable state. After he said that, I felt hurt and aggrieved, but because his friends were also there, I could not embarrass him, so I swallowed all my grievances. Diego handed the umbrella to me. Hold the umbrella for now. I took it from him without thinking. A moment later, warmth settled over my body. He had taken off his coat and draped it over my shoulders. The temperature has dropped tonight. Don't catch a cold. As he spoke, he took the umbrella back from me. I stared blankly at him, warmth suddenly filling my heart. So this was what it felt like to be cared for. Chapter 17. That night, when Diego and I were lost in the heat of passion, I panted as I held him tightly and said, I think I'm starting to like you more and more. When he heard that, his striking brows lifted slightly, and he reached out to hold me firmly in his arms. If it's only liking me, that's not quite enough. Blushing, I buried myself against his chest, feeling his heavy breathing. I asked him, then do you like me? His expression froze slightly. A moment later, he reached out and firmly pinched my cheek. For the sake of fairness, I won't tell you now. When the day comes that your heart is completely filled with me, I'll tell you the answer. I pouted, somewhat dissatisfied, then lowered my head and bit down hard on his chest, leaving behind 2 faint rows of teeth marks. The corners of his lips curved upward. In a good mood, he pulled me tightly into his arms once more, his deep eyes overflowing with amusement. Chapter 18. 2 days later, I received a phone call from one of Luis's buddies. As soon as I answered, I heard him say, Lisa, can you come see Luis? He got soaked in the rain 2 days ago, and he's had a high fever that won't go down for the past few days. When he becomes delirious from the fever, all he does is call your name. I frowned slightly. If he's sick, then he should get proper treatment. I'm not medicine that can cure him. He sighed helplessly. But the two of you were together for such a long time. Can you really let go of him completely in such a short period of time? I had never seriously considered that question, simply because I had already let go of Luis completely a long time ago. I froze for a moment, then calmly explained, during the thousands of days and nights Luis and I were together, every time I needed him the most, he always happened not to be there. I was able to let go completely because I truly no longer loved him. Even if he had never cheated on me, even if he had never taken the initiative to break up with me, sooner or later, I still would have left him. Chapter 19. Not long after I hung up the phone that day, Luis called me again. His voice did indeed sound a little hoarse, but not to the point where he could possibly have been delirious from fever. He said, "I'm already sick. Can't you comfort me a little? Why did you have to say such heartless things to hurt me?" I frowned tightly. Even now, he still thought there was room for the two of us to turn things around. I remained silent, but he continued, "Can't I just promise you? I definitely won't cheat on you again in the future. You'll be the only person in my eyes and in my heart. Stop being angry with me. Explain everything clearly to that backup guy of yours. Get a divorce and come back to me." Just listen to the things he was saying. Backup guy? Diego had never been my backup guy. In my heart, he had once been my close high school deskmate, then the benefactor who extended a helping hand to me when I was loneliest and most helpless. And now, even more than that, he was the husband I respected and cherished. I said to him, "Once you recover, let's meet," he hurriedly said with a smile. "There's no need to wait until I recover. Let's meet today." Chapter 20. We arranged to meet at a cafe. He arrived before me and had even ordered an Americano in advance, the coffee I often drank. I sat across from him, facing his smiling expression. I said indifferently, "Whatever needs to be said. Let's make everything clear today and bring this to a complete end." His gaze flickered slightly, and he said with a smile, "Did you move? I went to your place to look for you before, but the person who opened the door was a new tenant." I nodded. "Yes, after I got married, I gave up the apartment and moved in with my husband." Luis picked up his coffee in a fluster and took a sip. He gave an awkward smile. "It's all right. This way, we can consider ourselves even. It'll be easier for us to start over." I looked at him calmly. "Luis, I hope you'll listen carefully to what I'm about to say. I did not get married on an impulse. I had wanted to get married for a long time." Luis said unwillingly, "So you just casually found someone and married him?" Perhaps before, even I myself had not been clear on whether I had truly just casually found someone and married him. But thinking about it now, the answer was no. I looked at Luis and said, "We were together for 9 years. I remember that once, when I sprained my ankle while shopping at the mall, I called you because I wanted you to come pick me up, but you said you had just gotten home after a busy day and did not want to move at all. So, under other people's strange looks, I limped out of the mall, then limped to the roadside and hailed a cab home by myself." I paused, then continued. "There was another time when I was hospitalized for appendicitis surgery. My mother specially came from our hometown to take care of me, while you only came to see me briefly after work. During the weekend, when you had time off, you would rather sleep and play video games alone at home than come over and keep me company. In the past, whenever I thought of all the grievances I had suffered, I would always feel so heartbroken that I wanted to cry. But now, my heart was extremely calm, simply because I no longer cared." I looked at him and continued, "Actually, I could have digested all of those things by myself before, but when my mother was diagnosed with lung cancer last year, where were you? At the time, I felt as though the sky had collapsed. I had absolutely no idea what to do. Yet when I needed you the most, you still were not by my side." He hurriedly explained, "I was away on a business trip. It's not like you didn't know that I really had no way to come back and be with you at the time." I smiled faintly. "That's right. You had no way to come and be with me. But during that business trip, you actually returned to the company several times. Were you really so busy that even when you came back, You did not have time to visit my mother at the hospital even once? Even if you had merely brought something over, put it down, and left, it would have been enough. But instead, you kept lying to me, saying that you couldn't come back. Luis moved his lips. But in the end, he silently lowered his head. The reason I had completely given up on him was simply because I had placed my hopes in him again and again, only to be utterly disappointed again and again. After a long time, I grew numb. Once I grew numb, little by little, I stopped loving him. Chapter 21. At the beginning of the year, I had urged Luis to marry me many times. It was only because I was getting older, and because my mother was in poor health and wanted to see me marry and have children soon, that I had been so desperate to get married. At the time, Luis was my boyfriend, since I wanted to get married. Naturally, he was the one I had to marry. Fortunately, he had not agreed. Even now, when I recalled the situation last year when my mother was diagnosed with lung cancer, my heart still ached so badly that I wanted to cry. I sniffed and smiled with reddened eyes. When I was at the end of my rope, Diego was the one who stayed by my side the entire time. He helped my mother find the most authoritative specialist. Whenever he had time, he went to visit her in her hospital room. When I was sad, he was also the one who kept comforting me and cheering me up. Luis suddenly clenched his fists and said with a darkened gaze, "He was simply taking advantage of you while you were vulnerable." I smiled. Even if he was taking advantage of me while I was vulnerable, weren't you the one who gave him the opportunity to do so? If you truly had been unable to stay with me back then, it wasn't as though I couldn't have understood. But that wasn't the truth. You were simply used to putting me last in all your plans. Or perhaps I was never in your plans at all. He could fall in love at first sight with another woman, cheat on me, and then ask to break up with me without feeling the slightest bit guilty. Once the novelty of being with that woman wore off, he naturally assumed that as long as he wanted to get back together, I would return to his side. Love might take many forms. Sometimes, we lost ourselves because we loved someone, but sometimes, because we loved someone, we worked harder to be ourselves. Before leaving, I looked at him very seriously and said, "No one will stand in the same place forever, waiting without any hope." If I hadn't met Diego, perhaps I would never have seen that a beautiful love is one that makes a person feel happy. Fortunately, I met him. Chapter 22. After I left the cafe, I called Diego. He did not answer after the first ring. He had once told me that when he was in surgery, he would leave his phone in the break room, but he would not turn it off, because he was afraid of missing an important call. That way, as soon as he finished the surgery and saw a missed call on his phone, he could call back immediately. But that day, he never called me back. I waited from daytime until night, for more than 10 hours. I had never missed someone the way I missed him then. Even though he was not by my side, even though I kept waiting for his call, I did not feel aggrieved at all. I knew he was doing what he had to do. Even though he had never made me any promises, he had unknowingly given me an overwhelming sense of security. When I woke up in the middle of the night, Diego finally called me back. "Sorry, I was so busy that I could only call you back now." I laughed softly. When I spoke, my voice was still nasal with sleepiness. "Did something happen today? Why were you so busy?" There was a car accident on an overpass in the Eastern District. There were 3 critically injured patients. But fortunately, through the efforts of our entire department, we managed to save all of them. As Diego spoke, I could clearly hear his heavy breathing. He must have called me back immediately after leaving the operating room. Then he asked, "Was there something you needed when you called me today?" I gently pursed my lips, feeling a little embarrassed. A moment later, I gathered my courage and said to him, "It wasn't anything important. I just suddenly wanted to tell you that I love you." He suddenly fell silent. After a long while, he said, "Do you know something? I suddenly feel completely energized again, like I'm full of strength." At first, I did not understand what he meant. Only later did I learn that he had spent a full 11 hours in the operating room that day. During those 11 hours, he had not eaten a single bite of food and had only drunk some glucose water. Later, when he stepped out of the operating room, he was so exhausted that his vision was blurred and his legs could barely hold him up. Yet the first thing on his mind was calling me back. Chapter 23. Not long afterward, Luis sent me a text message. I'm sorry, I was wrong. After reading the message, I deleted his number. I knew that after deleting his number this time, he would not use another number to look for me again. 3 months after Diego and I obtained our marriage certificates, he held a wedding ceremony for me to make up for the one we had missed. On the night that symbolized our wedding night, he lay beside me, holding me tightly in his arms. His warm breath brushed against my ear as he told me that the thing he regretted most was not confessing his feelings to me as soon as we graduated from high school. Later, by the time he finally gathered the courage to confess to me, Luis was already by my side. After that, he had also dated other people and had once sincerely loved someone else. But after going around in circles, he eventually returned to where it all began. He said that he had never imagined that one day in the future, he would be fortunate enough to meet me again and join hands with me to spend the rest of our lives together.